In my research, I learned that in 1950, in the early Jim Crow era, the powers to be and those that wanted to continue the fear and suppression and intimidation of groups of people, particularly black people, erected Confederate statues and monuments throughout the South, not to celebrate history, but to remind people of color that although they were out of slavery, could vote and claim themselves to be full citizens of the United States, the oppressor still exists. As I return to Spotsylvania County, I reflect on the aforementioned statement. I began to look at the location of Robert E. Lee School, where it was placed. And I began to ask myself, why would Robert E. Lee School, why would a school named Robert E. Lee be placed outside a predominant African-American community? I asked you to think about what I shared with you earlier. The intimidation to warn, oppress, and remind. During the 1950s, a lot of property owned by well-to-do blacks, such as the Pennington, the Fairchild, the Dotson, the Coleman, the Quayles, and Taylors, live in the community along the same street, less than a mile from Robert E. Lee School. In my travel to the area, I met Mrs. Fairchild. She's about 60, and she lived down the street from Robert E. Lee. She attended Robert E. Lee. Her children attended Robert E. Lee, and then her grandchildren attend Robert E. Lee. They all have attended a school that the name after someone that oppressed people that look like them, to keep people like them in slavery and personally own people like them. For those that say it is only a name and has no meaning or significance, well, I beg to differ. Name inspire motivation, cause a sense of action, like General Patton, Eisenhower, MacArthur, Muhammad Ali, President Reagan, Einstein, and Martin Luther King. Who does the name, when those names are mentioned, people are motivated to inspire to make positive contributions to society. Just by the mere mention of those names, you are inspired to do things. Then there are names that inspire a different reaction. Jeffrey Dahmer, Benedict Arnold, Al Capone, Custer, Hitler. So I ask you, what does Robert E. Lee inspire or motivate a person to do?
Lee was a great man and one of the best produced by the Commonwealth. He was not perfect, but he can serve as a good example to all of us. Lee brought litigation before the war to free slaves. He had everything to gain by staying with the Union. He was offered command of all the Union forces. His home being a stone's throw from Washington, he knew he was sacrificing everything in defending his home state. He wasn't a secessionist, but he could not betray his homeland. Though he viewed the cause as doomed from the start, he took up defense of Virginia upon the announcement of federal troops being summoned to invade the South years before slavery was an articulated Union war aim. I certainly can understand if some may recoil as to any perceived symbol of the Confederacy. I'm not here to fight the Civil War over or for a moment to condone slavery or racial bigotry. We, however, need to know true history and its context. One of the first objectives of totalitarians is to obfuscate and distort history. I was deeply disappointed by the incorrect and incendiary remarks made by our governor as to Lee. If we want to make a stand against racial divisiveness, I think we should consider changing the nameplate on the governor's desk, given his actions, rather than the name of Lee Elementary.
The question tonight for the school board and in your coming discussions is whether Robert E. Lee's name on a school building today in 2021, 150 years after the man died, whether his name on the school building harms our students. We know the answer to that question, and we know it because we've heard from parents and students that it harms them to go to a school named after Robert E. Lee. The idea that the name of a man who not only owned slaves, but who is best known for trying to preserve the system of slavery, the idea that his name is harmful, it can't be that hard to imagine. It cannot be hard to fathom what that means to students. Elementary age children are in a stage of their development where they are learning to reckon with the world around them. Academically, they are learning about the Civil War. They learn that R.E. Lee was the embodiment of the Confederacy, and they wonder, why is their school named after him? Imagine yourself a fourth grade black student in R.E. Lee who puts these facts together. Your community holds in high esteem a man that thought it right to keep in bondage people who looked like you. Can you imagine what that might say to a student? Imagine being reminded every day, 180 days a year, for 6 years that you attend that school, that a venerated historic figure in your community felt so strongly that you were a lesser form of humanity that he risked everything to lead the effort to keep you in that lesser status. An elementary school who attends R.E. Lee walks into that building 1,000 times in their young years. How is their sense of themselves affected by that? Their sense of belonging, their sense of agency within the community. Can we not imagine that for many of them, doing this can be troubling and even painful?
I've asked the question in the past, how many races are there in this world? And people give me numbers. Numbers. And they're all wrong. There's only one race, the human race. And we're losing it. Let us do what we need to do as a community, come together on behalf of our student, the youth, because us old people, we won't be around long. Let's leave them a good legacy that they can be proud of and something they can cherish and share with their children.
The explosion of growth in our county has to equate, to monies being available somewhere. We bring about change not by moving out or burying our heads in the sand, but by speaking out and moving forward into the 21st century and beyond. My roots are strong here in Spotsy. I'm not going anywhere.